about to enter a realm where fact blurs with fiction. It's the world of urban legends, strange stories of unexpected threats, or ironic twists of fate. Stories that, to many of us, seem mostly true. But are they? I'm Natasha Henstridge. Join me for an intriguing hour of discovery as we explore Urban Legends Revealed. Criminals pop up frequently in urban legends. Their clever cons or stupid mistakes make for good storytelling. But in the following account, the fate of a hardened criminal is a little hard to believe.
This grim tale is set behind the cold stone walls of San Quentin's death row, the final stopping point for many of America's most notorious criminals. A place of desperation and despair. The interminable routine of prison life drove many inmates to distraction. Languishing in their concrete cages with nothing more to look forward to than a date with the executioner, some prisoners would no longer endure their hopeless existence. This is the story of one such inmate who was unwilling to let the law have the last word on his fate. Impatient with the endless legal and bureaucratic procedures that had continually delayed his execution, he decided instead to take his own life. But in the confines of a maximum security prison, that's a tough thing to accomplish. The inmates and their rooms were thoroughly searched several times a day. Anything that could conceivably be turned into a weapon was removed. How could anything left in his cell be fashioned into an instrument of death? It forced him to become very resourceful. But he did have an idea. That night, after lights out, he put a plan into action. Quietly, so as not to wake the other inmates, he set about building his suicide weapon. First, he unscrewed the hollow leg of his cot. Next, he tore his pack of playing cards into tiny bits, collecting only the red-colored paper scraps, and stuffed the pieces into the metal tube. Then he plugged one end of the tube with a broom handle, making sure it had an airtight fit. After that, he poured some water into the open end and then placed this strange contraption on the heater next to his cot. Finally, he lay down and aimed the open end of the hollow tube at his temple. And there he waited. Gradually, the water in the tube began to heat up, becoming steam. The steam created a building pressure inside the tube. And when the pressure reached a critical point, the cards shot out of the tube with lethal force, killing the suicidal inmate as surely as if he were shot with a gun. A clever method of self-destruction, but is it really possible to use a deck of cards to shuffle off this mortal coil? This story's been repeated since the 1930s, but San Quentin has been around for 150 years. Plenty of time for many strange tales, both fabricated and real, to take root.
The mystique, I think, goes back to capital punishment and our long, long history of carrying out executions here in the state of California. Back in 1893, when the Criminal Practice Act was passed, and the power of carrying out executions was taken from the local sheriffs and passed on to the prison. I think that is a huge part of why there is such a mystique about San Quentin.
And it's this reputation that makes the legend a bit suspect. After all, if you're going to invent a macabre prison drama, you're going to set it in one of America's most notorious institutions. On the other hand, it's easy to believe that such a bleak place could drive some inmates to suicide. But if someone were already on death row, what would drive them to end their misery when the end is already guaranteed?
One of the reasons why a person would commit suicide on death row is to reclaim some of the control over their own lives that has been taken away. And by choosing their own time to commit suicide, they have a level of control over their own fate.
But to gain such control over his fate, an unlikely weapon had to be created. Well, unlikely weapons turn out to be rather common on death row.
I've had an opportunity to see a number of types of weapons that have been created by inmates. You could take a comb, styrofoam cups, the candy wrappers that go around, those 1-cent candies, melt enough of them together, and you can actually fashion those into a stabbing weapon.
And what about a do-it-yourself shotgun pipe bomb?
Bombs are fashioned from everyday type of materials, paper, magazines, cardboard, and the inmates will take ground match heads, placing them inside of the device, attaching a fuse from torn cloth, and then from there, they now have their explosive device.
And in fact, William Kogut, a lumberjack convicted of killing a woman with a pocket knife, actually created such a device and blew himself up on October 20th, 1930. Instead of match heads, his ammunition was the red ink on his playing cards, which contained cellulose, a fiber from which the powerful explosive trinitrate cellulose is made. Add a little heat from an oil lamp to his ingenious contraption, and the doomed man had the last word on his own fate. Or so the story goes. But does such a device really work? We asked Eddie Serkin, a master at creating special effects out of everyday stuff.
We decided to put the urban legend to a test. And the test was to see whether the combination of the red dye, water, and heat in a pipe would create an explosion.
Once a test target is set up, the experiment begins.
We first started with a pipe. We plugged the end of it. We then filled the pipe with the diamond off of the cards, which had the red dye. We then added water. We put a flame underneath to see whether an explosion would happen.
But even with the heat of a propane torch, all we got was some boiled water and a little steam. Why didn't it work? It's because the legend combines two methods of creating explosions that don't work together: combustion from the red dye and steam, which would extinguish any combustion. For the weapon to work, it has to be modified to rely only on steam.
What we did was we took a piece of pipe and we plugged up one end like we did before, except this time we welded it like it was part of a bedpost.
Then a projectile had to be created to plug up the business end of the weapon, to create pressure in the pipe, and to provide ammunition. The projectile was lubricated with chicken grease, which can be found in a prison, and was then plugged into the end of the pipe. Once again, heat was applied. And the result? Imagine if this were the head of a suicidal inmate. Clearly, if a projectile can be found, a homemade pipe gun is possible. Conclusion? The story is mostly true. A tragic tale of a man determined to play the last hand he was dealt. This story is about a man in a cage, but our next legend features monsters on the loose. True or false? The gravitational pull of the planets can affect human behavior. The answer when we return. Can the gravitational pull of the planets affect human behavior? No. Because they're so far away, their combined influence is less than that of the TV you're now watching.
Most people who travel love to bring home souvenirs, but sometimes they're not too smart about what they decide to import. And occasionally, that ignorance can come back to bite them.
The story begins with a tourist who loves the desert. The arid air, the desolate quiet, the sturdy wildlife. While on a trip to Mexico, he discovers a rare species of cactus for sale. It's a beautiful specimen, and despite laws restricting the transport of such plants, he decides to bring it back home. He buys the exotic succulent for a hefty $200. Though he's been warned about sneaking plants across the border, there's no way some customs official is going to confiscate his exciting find. So he smuggles it into the U.S. Once in his living room, it becomes his prized possession. After some months, he gives the growing plant its usual morning spray, and to his amazement, it stirs. For a second, he thinks he's hallucinating. When he sprays it again, there's no mistaking. The plant shivers in reaction. Baffled by this, he decides to call up an expert in desert plant life to ask about what he's seen.
Hello. I was wondering if you could help me out. I recently bought
When he gets hold of a botanist, he explains how he purchased the cactus in Mexico and describes what it looks like.
Well, it's about chest high, probably 4 or 5 stalks on it.
The botanist is immediately alarmed.
I want you to get out of that house immediately.
He'll be there in 10 minutes.
You get out of the house now. I'll be there in 10 minutes.
All right.
Now totally confused, the man does what he's told. And in no time, the botanist races to the scene along with a strange utility truck. Suddenly, 2 uniformed men step out of the truck and dash into the house. The cactus owner has no idea what's going on.
Very dangerous. Bring out the cactus. We're gonna torch it.
Torch it? Whoa,
Yes, wait here. No, you wait here.
Then the 2 men rush outside with the cactus and immediately torch the plant with a flamethrower.
No!
The owner is livid and demands to know what's going on.
There's a reason we don't smuggle plants into this country.
As the cactus goes up in flames, the botanist says he's lucky to be alive. And he explains that there are reasons why officials don't allow plants to be imported without inspection. The mystery becomes clear as the flames die out. In the embers, they find that the cactus was hollow and is entirely filled with the charred remains of giant bird-eating tarantulas. These huge creatures lay their eggs in this species of cactus where they grow to full adult size before they burst out in a shower of crawling death. It's a story with legs. But is it real? Or a paranoid fairy tale? At first glance, the story seems incredible. And if it were true, you'd think it would have originated in the American Southwest or Mexico, where the wild cactus is found in abundance. But instead, it first took root in the early 1970s in Northern Europe.
The stories are very popular in Northern Europe, Scandinavia, and in Britain and in Germany. And if it's a cactus, then it would have to be imported. So therefore, it's exotic. It's the fear of the stranger, the fear about things that are brought in from a foreign, exotic locale that is fraught with danger.
Only later did the legend reach Canada and the United States. In the story, the plant is always a cactus or a yucca plant. Some versions have the spiders hatching in the dark of night while the victim is fast asleep. Other versions feature scorpions instead of spiders, and it assumes that the audience finds such creatures especially horrifying, which isn't always the case in all cultures. The plant always quivers slightly as the first sign that something's wrong. And there's a clear reason why the story gets under our skin. The terrifying thought of being hit with a shower of creatures for which humans have evolved a primal fear. It's also why they star in another famous urban legend, the story of the woman who wakes up with a colony of newborn spiders in her hairdo. Spiders don't live in human hair, but the cactus legend claims that they live in these prickly desert plants. Well, the fact is, in today's global economy, many creatures manage to smuggle their way into the country, hiding in imported plants, spiders among them.
Well, not too long ago, we did a boat inspection on a freighter, and down in the hold it was carrying bananas. And as we went through all these bananas, you would see spiders running around. And what they were tarantulas. And the tarantulas were actually on board because they had been feeding on insects within the banana bunches before they were cut.
And there have been at least a dozen instances over the years where large shipments of bananas have been brought into grocery stores, and inside will be a large tarantula, which of course horrifies shoppers when they see that.
So spiders can hitch a ride on a banana boat, but the legend says they were imported in a saguaro cactus.
The saguaro definitely has a reputation as a desert sentinel. They're almost like a native condominium for creatures out in the desert. A lot of animals and insects do rely on cavities within the saguaro to live out their lives. Cactuses can be host to birds that build their nest in them, and some insects that will lay eggs, and the larval stage of the insects will start the first stages of their life within a cactus.
But does this mean they can end up stuffed full of giant spiders?
Saguaro, like all other cacti, are mostly water inside. Their stems are very thick and fleshy.
Which means there's no room for a colony of monster tarantulas.
Tarantulas burrow in the ground. They do not burrow in cactus. They don't require any kind of cactus host at all. And they maintain their egg sacs in their burrow. And the egg sacs are so small anyways, it wouldn't cause that undulation, that movement that's been reported inside these cactus. It's just not their lifestyle. There's absolutely nothing to fear with bringing a cactus home into your home or into your yard.
In the end, the account of a cactus bursting with creepy crawlies is just a horror story. So why does the legend live on?
Human beings as a species seem to need something to be afraid of. They seem to need the fear factor, if you will, in life. Life without the boogeyman just isn't fun.
In this story, a secret menace could threaten one man.
What are you guys
But
doing?
in our next legend, there's a secret that could change the world. True or false? In his youth, George Washington actually chopped down a cherry tree and then confessed to it. The answer when we return. Did George Washington actually chop down a cherry tree in his youth? False. This was a fable made up by author Mason Weems after Washington's death.
Conspiracy theories are frequent themes in urban legends. Stories that suggest there are secret forces at work controlling our lives in unseen ways. Here's one such story that's widely believed because it hits us where we live, or at least where we drive.
In this story, a typical couple has just bought a new car for a big cross-country trip they've planned. After checking out a few models, they decide on a nice, roomy vehicle that the salesman says was a special delivery from the factory. In any case, they're happy with their purchase and start out on their long journey. For a while, everything seems normal, but then they notice something strange.
It hasn't moved at all.
After driving over 200 miles, the gas gauge still reads full. Concerned that the gauge might be broken and not wanting to run out of gas on the freeway, they stop to fill up at the next gas station. But to their surprise, the tank only takes 1 gallon.
Hey, you're not gonna believe this. 1 gallon of gas.
Hey, I'm not complaining.
Me either.
Now they don't know what to think. By the time they get back home, 1,800 miles later, they've used only half a tank. About 9 gallons. They averaged 200 miles per gallon.
So what do you think?
Thrilled with this unexpected bonus, they tell their friends about their miracle car. The wife is so impressed, she even takes the time to write to the manufacturer a letter thanking them for engineering such a fuel-efficient car. But about a week later, the husband steps out the front door for the morning paper and sees 2 strange men hovering under the hood of his car.
Hey! What are you guys doing?
He demands to know what's going on.
Get away from my car!
But the strange men quickly pocket some device,
Hey! What are you doing?
then dash for a nearby car
Hey guys, get back here!
and race off. The husband has no idea what they were up to. But when he starts up the car, it runs normally. Weird. For the next few days, all seems normal, until the wife is out on an errand one day and runs out of gas. Unbelievable. Without warning, the car has suddenly become a typical gas guzzler. But how was this possible? It turns out that the car they bought was a secret experimental model sent to the dealer by accident. In it was a special device that enabled it to get 200 miles per gallon. It was that device that the 2 agents from the manufacturer removed the other morning.
Stop that!
A bizarre tale of intrigue. But is it true that a car was designed to get 200 miles per gallon only to be kept secret from the public? Corporate conspiracy theories have been around for a long time. The bigger the industry, the more sinister the theories. And there's nothing bigger than the oil industry, the implied villain of the legend. The Western world depends on petroleum to keep the lights burning and the cars rolling. At stake are trillions of dollars, political fortunes, even matters of war and peace. It all plays into a popular perception that secret forces actually run the world, that a hidden cabal of the super-rich determines the fate of nations, the technology we use, and the direction of the global economy. But could a powerful industry suppress a technology that might cut into its profits?
Most everything that we think we know is wrong. The idea of the suppression of technology is not an urban legend. It's fact. It's been documented over and over again. Media keeps telling and mentioning occasionally these alternative technologies, but in the next breath they say, of course, that's 20 years in the future. Speaking for myself, I heard this 20 years ago, and here it is 20 years, and we still don't have it. There's always money to be made in suppressing technology.
Among the professional car enthusiasts who feel this way is the man who built the original Batmobile and the time-traveling DeLorean from Back to the Future.
I've heard many rumors about various engineers and patent persons that have come up with parts for cars to save gas. We were very fortunate that cars that we created in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s were dramatically exploited throughout the motion picture and television industry. 1970, in come the crisis about gas, big cars.
Which fueled a new round of stories about a magic carburetor that could get great mileage out of traditional gas guzzlers.
That means if you got 60 miles to a gallon of gas and the guy engineered a carburetor, that carburetor never showed up again. All of a sudden it disappeared. And the gas crunch still stayed on and the prices still went up.
And in 1936, Canadian Automotive Trade magazine reported that inventor Charles Nelson Pogue from Winnipeg designed a fuel vaporizing carburetor that squeezed 25.7 miles out of a pint of gas. That's over 200 miles per gallon. No experts were allowed to examine it, but those who drove the test car admitted its performance was astounding. And it was this story that launched the urban legend. Pogue even patented his invention. So why then aren't we getting 200 miles per gallon today? One claim is that the carburetor wouldn't work after additives like lead were introduced in gasoline in the 1940s. There are also accounts of Pogue's prototype being stolen and of Pogue himself being bought out by oil companies. In recent years, other designers have also demonstrated super high mileage cars, but in each case, the idea was squelched by politics, theft, media skepticism, or financial roadblocks. While some engineers insist there's a lot more energy to a gallon of gas than we now get, others say these high mileage claims violate the laws of thermodynamics. And many auto professionals feel it would take more than a carburetor to get one of these chariots to go 200 miles on a gallon of gas.
The carburetor is a component of a motor. There are about 30 other components. The exhaust system, the oil pump, the water pump. You've got all these other factors to factor into the 200 mile per gallon motor. It would seem to me that if you could economically build a car that people could afford, that could get 50 miles or 60 or 70 miles a gallon, people would make a rush to the door.
The technology that Pogue supposedly invented, is it suppressed? No. Anybody can go to the files of the U.S. Patent Office. Charles Hogue's patents are there, and if you want to build his carburetor and you think it'll get 200 miles per gallon, you can.
While many elements of the legend are true, controversy still rages over how much of it is credible. And we may be part of the reason why.
We have to understand that the primary purpose of the media is to defend the status quo. That's why they refuse to even discuss UFOs. That's why they will not consider crop circles. That's why they won't consider alternative technology.
And so, as long as there are doubts about governments and corporations, the urban legend continues to get incredible mileage. This legend centers on a brilliant invention, but our next legend is all about a very dumb mistake. True or false? Native Americans originally smoked tobacco through the nose. The answer when we return. Did Native Americans originally smoke tobacco through the nose? It's true. Tobacco gets its name from a forked pipe called a tubac, which fit into the nostrils.
Travel can be anything from enjoyable, like a cruise, to a chore, like a morning commute. But if you don't keep your eyes open, it can also turn out to be a nightmare.
All aboard!
This story could happen today or 50 years ago. A businessman returning from a long out-of-town conference boards a train for the long ride home.
All clear!
He quickly finds his sleeper compartment and settles down for the overnight journey. Once he's unpacked, he gets out of his clothes and tries to get comfortable. But he can't relax. He's just too stressed out. Sleep is impossible. So, while staying in his comfy robe, he heads down to the club car. He figures knocking back a few drinks might help. When he arrives, an attractive young lady is there, and she's got her eye on him. Though he is married, he starts up a little small talk, and she offers him a drink. Happily, perhaps too happily, he accepts. A few rounds later, our businessman's judgment is not in top form. So when the young woman suggests they have a nightcap in her compartment, he accepts. Figuring he won't get caught, he follows her back to her sleeping car. The legend doesn't say what happens that night, though you can take a good guess. But the next morning, our businessman finds himself waking up alone. No sign of his pretty partner. He quickly realizes that he's completely naked under the sheets. His bathrobe is gone. More importantly, so is his wallet. He's so hungover, he can't remember a thing that happened the previous night. He grabs a blanket to cover himself, and it's then that the train comes to a stop. Looking out the window, he's stunned to discover that he's not in his hometown, but in another city hundreds of miles away. Not only was he robbed, but the car he fell asleep in decoupled from the part of the train headed for his hometown and instead took another track, leaving him stranded in a strange city, unable even to leave the compartment for help. Back home, his wife wonders why he hasn't shown up at the station. And our businessman wonders how he's going to explain the way he ended up naked and penniless on the wrong train. An embarrassing story, but is it true or a tall tale? Alternative versions of the story say that only the businessman's shoes were rooted on the wrong train after he left them out to be shined overnight. But that's not much fun. Written accounts of this story go back to at least 1971, but the setting for the tale suggests it's far older. Most likely born in the days before World War II, when commuting by train was as common as air travel is today. Of course, private eyes on the lookout for cheating spouses also go back to those days. And from their hard-boiled perspective, the train legend sounds true.
I've heard the story. Certainly I can't think of any reason why it wouldn't be possible. In fact, I'm reasonably sure that it probably has happened in some context somewhere. I've seen a little bit of everything from what I dub flirting with intent all the way up to full-blown lifestyle differences where someone will have a steady long-term relationship in multiple cities, multiple states.
But a successful cheater goes against our sense of justice. So the urban legend addresses this by giving the wayward husband his comeuppance in a wonderfully embarrassing way. And this, of course, makes the truth of the tale suspect. On the other hand, resourceful young ladies with good looks and a craving for cash have certainly been known to pounce on an opportunity.
Conniving, devious women on trains? Far-fetched? Maybe. Possible? Certainly. Anyone traveling puts themselves at risk for those who would take advantage.
Indeed, a favorite scam of prostitutes on the Vegas Strip is the old trick and roll. You bring a customer up to a room, and while he's in the shower, make off with his wallet and his clothes. The legend traffics in the satisfaction we get in seeing one cheater cheated by another. It's part of the appeal of another famous urban legend wherein a traveling businessman checks into a hotel with a prostitute and wakes up in a bathtub full of ice with his kidney missing. Cheaters never prosper. And the fact is, illicit rendezvous did happen in the grand days of train travel. So says a man who was there.
Monkey business can be described in many different ways. But let's talk about secretaries. If you want to make a trip to San Francisco overnight with the fine dining and the good drinks, you'd naturally want your secretary to keep a note on what's going to happen. Southern Pacific knew exactly what they had on the night trains. They knew, and they cultivated it because there's big business in this.
But the legend rests on a different sort of coupling. The kind trains do when a car detaches from one train and connects with an engine of another. That kind of hitching up also goes on today.
You have your couplers that join the cars together, and by raising the pin and separating the cars, you have your air brakes between the cars, and you have to close that off. and then you separate your cars.
So waking up to find yourself on a different choo-choo in a different city is possible. At least, it is if there's nobody around to check on you. But in reality, there are human safeguards against ending up on the wrong track.
Trains are handled out of the dispatcher's office in Los Angeles. The movement of the train was under strict book of rules, established movement, so that nobody could get lost. You got on the wrong train or what. You'd know just exactly where you're at. You have people that would make sure that no accidents happen.
Still, there are those who wonder if the legend isn't true.
With regard to the woman on the train, could be a story concocted to keep somebody's fat out of the fire. But in order to determine that, you have to know what really happened. Maybe it's not so far-fetched.
In the end, even though every detail of the legend is possible, nobody has tracked down a case of the decoupled compartment caper. In this story, our traveler cooks his own goose. But the woman in our next legend cooks a lot more than that. True or false? Big Ben is the name of the famous clock in the tower of the British Parliament. The answer, when we return. Is Big Ben the name of the clock in the tower of the British Parliament? No, it's the name of the 13-ton bell inside the tower.
Modern technology seems able to fulfill almost any wish on demand. That includes our desire to look good. But as this urban legend suggests, sometimes it might give us too much of a good thing.
A young woman prepares for her wedding, but as the big day approaches, she worries about her pale appearance. Like all brides, she wants to look her best. But standing in front of the mirror, her skin looks anemic, and the wedding is only a week away.
I don't know, guys. I mean, I look kind of pale.
Her maid of honor suggests she get a few sessions at a tanning salon. Unhappy with her pasty complexion, the bride imagines herself as a bronzed beauty on her wedding day. She calls the nearest tanning salon to make an appointment.
Hi, how can I help you? Yes, I'd like to book a tanning appointment for today.
In a rush to brown herself up, she asks for a few emergency sessions, a couple of hours a day if possible. But she's told by the attendant that for safety reasons, they can only allow her one 30-minute session every other day.
Really?
Well, this simply won't do. She'll never be dark enough in time.
Let us know. Okay. Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
So she comes up with a plan.
Hi, yes, I'd like to book a tanning appointment for today. I'd like to book an appointment at 3 today. Yes, I'd like to book an appointment at 4 today.
She goes in for the half-hour session she booked at the salon, but when she emerges, she heads directly for a second treatment at another salon. Then, after toasting for another 30 minutes, she goes in for a quick bake at a third salon. And she does this every day, right up to the wedding. By the time of the big event, she looks radiant. Her skin is graced with a rich, lustrous tan. She looks like a month on the French Riviera. But she's also feeling a bit queasy, probably just a case of nerves. Her churning stomach has given her some serious bad breath. Her bridesmaids assure her everything will be fine.
Thank you.
Without any time left, a refreshing mint will have to do. Then, once she's dressed, she gets a final spritz of perfume, and now she's ready. The ceremony begins, and our happy bride is glowing with her healthy-looking tan. But as the moment of truth arrives, she feels faint. She starts to swoon and then loses consciousness and collapses in a heap.
Elizabeth! Okay? Elizabeth! Elizabeth, come back, sweetie, come on.
Everyone rushes to her aid. As they try to revive her, they notice the same awful breath they detected earlier.
Oh my God.
Turns out our bride hasn't fainted. She has died. and the smell emanating from her mouth is the odor of rancid meat. Days later, the coroner discovers that she died from excessive tanning. The radiation literally cooked her from the inside out, and her intestines have started to rot. A tragic tale. But is it for real? Or is the story a bit overdone?
Come on back, baby. Come on.
This legend first emerged around 1987 when indoor tanning became a popular way to get in shape for the summer. And on the face of it, the story rings true. Whole industries like Hawaiian Tropics thrive on the modern urbanite's attraction to the bronze beauty. It's all very sexy, and it creates a lot of social pressure on a pale-skinned bride who wants to look cute and healthy. Of course, healthy and healthy-looking are two different things. Back in the Middle Ages, when most people labored outdoors, only the rich could avoid the sun. So the standard of beauty became the fair princess. But today, nothing suggests sex, glamour, or wealth like a rich golden tan.
I work every day, and by the time I get off work, there's just no sunlight. So I come and I lay down the tanning booth and I get the warmth and the relaxation and then the color. Obviously, I feel much healthier when I've got a nice golden tan to sport. I don't have any problems, but if I overestimate my time, then it's like getting in the sun. You know, you can get a little tender.
And this is what worries health professionals. And it's their concerns that fuel the legend of the broiled bride.
And I would love to be more tan, but I would not even think about doing that because I also read about malignant melanoma and the fact that people are dying from that. And I don't want to be part of that number, so I stay out of the sun.
The fact is, UV light can cause wrinkles and even severe burn. In fact, excessive tanning can even kill. In May of 1989, Patsy Campbell of Portage, Indiana, suffered fatal burns by combining too much time in a tanning booth with the use of Sorolin, a drug taken to increase the skin's photosensitivity. Since then, the FDA only allows a maximum of 15 minutes a day in a tanning booth. Burns like these, while only skin deep, can be lethal due to infection, shock, or other complications. This is true whether the burns are caused by UV light or by heat. All of which makes the urban legend sound credible. However, the bride in the legend didn't die of skin burns. She was cooked from the inside out. But is this even possible? In the early days of tanning salons, skeptics were quick to liken the new machines to microwave ovens. And in fact, the legend traffics in the popular misunderstanding between UVA light from a tanning booth and microwaves.
A UVA ray can give you a sunburn, but a microwave is such a far energy source and a different electromagnetic wavelength difference that we can't even compare them. So you won't cook a piece of meat in a tanning bed, but you will be severely sunburned.
Both forms of radiation are bad for you, but there's a major difference between getting sunburned and becoming a backyard barbecue.
In all the years I've worked here, I've never had anybody overexpose, to the point where they'd have serious damage or life-threatening situation. This has never happened.
You can't tan food in a microwave, so you can't cook people in a tanning bed.
The health hazards are real, but the legend is not.
True or false? That's always the question. We hope in the last hour that we've provided some answers. Answers to many of the tall tales that over the years have become urban legends.